Good morning, this is Jimmy Halfacre. I wanted to walk through the inspection that was done, the structural inspection that was done on 110 Miles Lane on the afternoon of the 27th. I'd like to start by looking at the elevation measurements that were made on the inside of the floor. First, we sketched the structure to put in the location of the outside walls, the doors. And elevation measurements were started by taking a reference point at 0 on wood at the front door. Hence, you'll see the number 0 slant 0 / W. That means that 0 was set at that point. Going around, it was 2/10 higher, same, 3/10 low. Then you've got 2/10, 4/10. All numbers are well within a reasonable range, with the highest number being only 3/10 higher than the reference, and the lowest number being 6/10 lower than the reference, giving an overall elevation variation of 9/10 of an inch. Measurements were made in the garage, or rather the carport. All numbers in this location are well within a reasonable range also. Was some areas of the floor that you could feel some depression or some minor difference, but these were minor and were not viewed as a concern. And when we arrived, we made a picture of the front, right side, the back side, and then the left side. Gutters are in place in all areas. Before we go into the crawl space, one of the concerns of this site is the fact that it appears that the topography is higher on at least 2 locations. This would form a scenario, and also in addition to the topography being higher, the crawl space is actually lower than the outside perimeter soil. This would serve that this higher elevations would have a hydraulic pressure on the water, and it would cause water to be a concern underneath the crawl space. That is certainly what we found. One of the things that I want to talk about is that the entire underneath is covered in plastic. First, let me say that crawl space is evolved. Crawl space science has evolved over the last few years. Only some 6 or 8 years ago did it come into being that the building code was changed that allowed for a crawl space to be fully sealed. Prior to that time, it was listed that all crawl spaces had to be vented, cross-vented, and they gave a number of vents per square foot of area. That's changed. Crawl space venting now can still have that as an option, but many structures are being built with the crawl space enclosed and with that area, the environment in that area controlled by encapsulation, as well as dehumidification and sump pumps to remove moisture. This was found that crawl space was the soil is soft, and also and was not necessarily wet, but it was soft and was heavy laden with water in some locations. Ductwork has been resealed. This is the newest type of insulation that typically is recommended for ductwork. The structural components are in good condition. This is a typical pier that was noted to be present. Some remnants of a crawl space moisture barrier is present on the bottom of the top of the floor.
What is that showing? Showing a little water.
And also, Earl says this shows some water that was present underneath there. There was one space where the visqueen had been torn and exposing wood, and you can see from those wood components the discoloration is indicative of exposure to moisture. It is not, this discoloration does not suggest, in my opinion, that we have a fungus problem. There's another picture of close-up of wood, and another one, and then more of the visqueen. Some of the supplementary support's been added. This is, of course, obviously handyman grade work, and could be reworked. Not necessarily that significant a defect. This is another area where we're wet.
No, I'm showing there are no ventilation that back.
And well, and also Earl says there's no ventilation along the wall in some places. So now that's an earlier picture. So let's talk about remediation. The practice of putting the black plastic underneath the joist is controversial. In research for writing this report, I found that there were multiple opinions, some of which lay opinions, of course, some of which by more respected authorities. But in summary, what I have come to feel is that the drainage, the topography is not going to change. The installation of a deep subsurface drain could be done after we did a significant amount of geotechnical evaluation to determine exactly the presence and the flow of groundwater. But a much easier approach would be to fully encapsulate the crawl space. Now, one of the things that should be mentioned is, given the age of this house, it is certainly acknowledged that it has not, from that was visible, that we were able to evaluate, we do not see any structural distress as a result of water at this point. However, it should be emphasized that that opinion is based solely on one minor area where we had access and could see wood components beyond the plastic. Several things should be considered about the plastic. Yes, it does indeed isolate a certain amount of movement of water, but it also has the potential to result in condensation above the plastic, which could result in long-term deterioration, and particularly with it going unnoticed. Additionally, one of the stated concerns of any encapsulation, whether it's a closed cell foam method or this plastic, is that it eliminates plumbing penetrations from view, and one cannot determine if there is a plumbing issue until it becomes a very serious and expensive item to repair. In short, after reviewing all of the findings, and again I'll state that there's a lot more that we don't know than what we did find out, that we can base as fact, and that would be present on this home. The ideal circumstance, and that would be the best risk reduction for this structure, would be to have one of the local crawl space companies do an encapsulation of the crawl space to reduce the potential. This would reduce the potential, rather, of the problems of wood fungus, and it would also change the humidity in there in terms of available water that could influence any of the components as well as migrate up through the structure. I didn't speak on the idea of the wood. The laminate has also should be considered in this evaluation and equation. Laminate, in many instances and brands, has proven to be, as a minimum, a reducer of moisture flow, and in some cases it's a moisture blocker. So if this was a moisture blocker on top of wood floors, this also exposes that subfloor to additional risk. So in summary, my recommendation is talk with a crawl space encapsulation company about their services, and I'll stand by ready to advise you on proceeding with that as may be appropriate. Thank you.